To finish this brief series on introducing change mapping, one of the obvious points is, well, how do we use it? When do we use it? What thing do we use it for? The principle is that we actually use it for everything. This particularly applies to the crucial distinctions between architecture and design. We want to use it for both. We want to use it for exploration, we want to use it for exploitation, for when we're doing something that we already know how to do, because we can still learn from those as well. But one of the points about the difference between architecture and design is that architecture always looks upward to the abstract. How do things work together better, more on purpose? Design goes down to the real. How are we actually going to do it? How do we go from the abstract down to the logical structure about how things are going to fit together in general terms, then down to the physical structure, the exact software we're going to use, and then down to the deployment level, the one that we're going to use at operations. So every single task works exactly the same way in change mapping. We're always going to check context, scope, do the plan, do the action, do the review, listen, learn, iterate round. So we want to be chaining different approaches. For example, we do a big picture of, should we even be doing this at all? The next mission would be, what's the basics of how we're going to do it? Working our way from enterprise architects would know this as working our way down the ZAP levels. Going from the most abstract, the biggest picture, down to the fine detail of action. And yet it's still exactly the same. They're just different missions that draw on the previous mission. We're chaining from one to the next. We're moving from architecture towards design. Another one is that we're often branching. We're moving sideways. That a context may have several, we can find a number of scopes within a context. Within a scope, we're often going to develop a number of plans. A plan may have many actions coming out of that plan, particularly when we're trying to resolve uncertainties that we don't know, to shift the unknown unknowns and unknown knowns into known knowns, or at least knowable ones. And we're also doing a lot of nesting. The change mapping structure itself, the core context plans, scope, plan, action, review, that's rather abstract and it's generically going to be the same everywhere. But we also need to call in context-specific things. If we're working in finance, we're going to be using very different tools than if we're working in IT, or if we're working in HR, or if we're working in marketing. They depend on different models, and different tools we'll use in different industries. A tool we might use, or a framework we might use in banking, is not the same as we'd want to use in telecoms or in farming. So those are context-specific tools, but they act as plug-ins. We call in those. We go down into the detail. It's like nesting boxes. So there are little mini missions. When we don't know something, we can fire off a mini mission to say, we now need to find out about this. Our mission within this larger mission is to find out about something. So the same principles still apply. It also helps us to keep on track to purpose and to prevent scope creep. So we're using this consistently, every scope, every scale. We're chaining from one task to another, from one learning level to another, from chaining down from the most big picture down to the operations, the results, and looping back. They're still always following the same change mapping approach. We're branching when we're running branches in parallel. We're linking them together as necessary, and we nest down to find the detail that we need. So all of this provides a consistent frame for tackling the whole issue, from going from architecture through to design, through to operations and back. So when people talk about DevOps, for example, we're talking about Arc DevOps results long term, over the multiple timescales. It's still exactly the same approach. That's what helps us keep our sanity when the complexity rises beyond the normal levels that we can bear. So change mapping is completely consistent, whether we're doing architecture, design, or whatever. It's the detail tools that we call in that change, but we handle them in a consistent way as well. And the core method to hold them all together is always the same. Every scope, every scale, every type of context, every type of content, every stage of implementation, every timescale. That's what we can do with change mapping. Thanks for watching. Do look at the YouTube description for links to further detail. And don't forget to subscribe for other videos and also to support us on Patreon to help us produce these videos and the tools themselves.